A first-class seat to London costs $15,000. But for Andrew Harrington, the price of arrogance was about to cost him his entire life. He thought the young black girl in seat 1A was a mistake, a glitch in the system, someone who didn't belong in his world of luxury. He screamed, he threatened, and he demanded she be removed before takeoff. He thought he was the most powerful person on that plane. He was wrong. When the cockpit door opened, 5 words changed everything and froze Andrew's blood cold. That's the boss's daughter. And that was just the beginning of his nightmare. The air inside the Concorde Lounge at JFK's Terminal 7 was always a distinct temperature, cool enough to warrant a cashmere sweater, but never cold enough to be uncomfortable. It was the climate of money. Andrew Harrington checked his Patek Philippe watch for the 3rd time in 2 minutes. The heavy gold band sat tight against his wrist, a constant reminder of the weight he carried and the weight he threw around. At 52, Andrew was the managing partner at Sterling and Oakhaven Capital. He dealt in hostile takeovers, asset stripping, and making grown men cry in boardrooms. He was a man who viewed the world not as a community, but as a hierarchy. And he sat at the top. "Champagne, Mr. Harrington?" a server asked, appearing silently at his elbow. Andrew didn't look up from his phone. "No, I want to know why Flight 88 to London Heathrow is boarding late. My time is worth $6,000 a minute. Do the math on how much Regal Horizon Airlines owes me right now." The server, used to the tantrums of the ultra-wealthy, gave a tight, practiced smile. "I believe they are beginning pre-boarding for first class now, sir." Andrew stood up abruptly, knocking the edge of the table. He didn't apologize. He grabbed his leather briefcase, Italian calfskin, custom-made in Milan, and stormed toward the gate. He needed this flight to be perfect. He was heading to London to close the merger with British Ether, a telecommunications giant. If he landed this deal, his bonus alone would buy a small island. If he failed, the board at Sterling and Oakhaven would finally have the ammunition to oust him. The pressure was a vice tightening around his temples. He reached the gate just as the agent, a tired-looking woman named Brenda, picked up the microphone. "We are now welcoming our first-class passengers and global elite members to board Flight 88, Brenda announced. Andrew pushed past a young couple holding a baby. "Excuse me, elite coming through." He slapped his boarding pass onto the scanner before Brenda was even ready. The machine beeped green. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Harrington," Brenda said, though her eyes didn't meet his. "About time." He grunted, striding down the jet bridge. He loved the smell of a plane before the masses boarded. It smelled of sanitized leather and potential. He turned left upon entering the aircraft, heading into the sanctuary of the first-class cabin. Regal Horizon's first class was legendary individual suites with sliding privacy doors, lie-flat beds, and caviar service before takeoff. Andrew had assigned himself Seat 1A. It was the premier spot, the bulkhead, the seat of power. He always sat in 1A. It was a superstition, but also a statement. But as he rounded the corner into the cabin, he stopped dead in his tracks. His mouth opened slightly, then clamped shut into a thin white line. There was someone in 1A. It wasn't a celebrity, it wasn't a diplomat, it wasn't even one of his business rivals. Sitting in his seat wearing a faded grey oversized hoodie, ripped jeans, and large noise-cancelling headphones was a young black girl. She couldn't have been more than 22. Her feet were tucked up onto the leather ottoman clad in battered Converse sneakers. She was scrolling through an iPhone with a cracked screen, completely oblivious to his presence. Andrew blinked. The image didn't compute. This was first class. A ticket here cost more than a Honda Civic. This girl looked like she had just come from a college library or a protest. She didn't have the look. She didn't have the smell of old money or the sharp edge of new money. She looked regular, and she was in his seat. Andrew felt that familiar heat rise up the back of his neck, the rage that had made him a terror on Wall Street. He didn't check his boarding pass. He didn't need to. He knew where he belonged, and he knew with the certainty of a man who had never been told no without firing the person who said it that she did not belong there. He stepped into the aisle, blocking the light, casting a shadow over her. She didn't look up. He cleared his throat. A loud, aggressive, guttural noise. Nothing. She bobbed her head slightly to whatever music was blasting in her ears. Andrew dropped his heavy leather briefcase onto the floor with a thud that vibrated the cabin floor. The girl finally stopped scrolling. She slid one ear cup off her ear and looked up at him. Her eyes were dark, calm, and utterly unimpressed. "Can I help you?" she asked. Her voice was soft, melodic, but it held a steeliness that Andrew instantly disliked. "You're in my seat." Andrew said, his voice projecting, so the 3 other passengers already seated in the cabin could hear. He wanted an audience. He wanted to shame her. The girl looked at the seat number on the wall, 1A, and then pulled a crumpled boarding pass out of her hoodie pocket. She glanced at it, then back at him. "I don't think so," she said, sliding her headphones back on. Andrew felt a vein in his forehead pulse. The disrespect, the audacity. He reached out and tapped her shoulder hard. She flinched, ripping the headphones off completely this time. "Don't touch me," she snapped, the calm vanishing instantly. "And don't steal seats you didn't pay for," Andrew sneered, leaning down his expensive cologne, overpowering her space. "I don't know what kind of affirmative action lottery or employee standby game you're playing, sweetheart. But this is the real world. This is the $15,000 section. Economy is back there, way back there." He pointed toward the rear of the plane like he was banishing a leper. The girl stared at him. A slow smile spread across her face. It wasn't a smile of submission. It was the smile of a predator watching prey walk into a trap. "I'm not moving," she said simply. Andrew laughed, a dry barking sound. "Oh, we'll see about that." He turned around and pressed the call button. He pressed it again and again. He held it down until a flight attendant came rushing from the galley, looking flushed and panicked. "Is everything all right, sir?" the flight attendant asked. Her name tag read Jennifer. She was young, blonde, and looked terrified of Andrew before he even spoke. "No, Jennifer, everything is not all right," Andrew boomed. "I have a squatter in my seat. I want her removed. Now!" The cabin went silent. The drama had begun. Jennifer, the flight attendant, looked between the towering, red-faced man in the Italian suit and the young girl in the hoodie who had gone back to scrolling on her phone. "Sir, may I see your boarding pass?" Jennifer asked, her voice trembling slightly. Andrew scoffed, digging into his jacket pocket. "I am Andrew Harrington. I fly this airline 3 times a month. I am a Global Elite Platinum member. I specifically requested seat 1A. My assistant confirmed it this morning." He thrust the paper pass at her. Jennifer took it, scanning the details. She frowned. Then she looked at the girl. "Miss, may I see yours as well?" The girl sighed, handing over the crumpled piece of paper again. Jennifer held them side by side. The tension in the cabin was thick enough to choke on. A passenger in 2B, an elderly woman with pearls, lowered her magazine to watch. "Mr. Harrington," Jennifer said slowly. There seems to be a misunderstanding." "Exactly," Andrew snapped. "Get her bag. Escort her back to row 45 where she belongs." "No, sir," Jennifer said, handing him back his ticket. "Your seat is 1B, the aisle seat. This passenger, Miss Naomi, is assigned to 1A, the window." Andrew froze. He snatched the ticket back. He stared at it. There in small print, he had ignored in his rush, it read. For a second, silence reigned. But men like Andrew Harrington do not admit mistakes. They double down. They twist reality until it fits their narrative. He looked at the girl, Naomi. She was looking at him with that same infuriatingly calm expression. "This is unacceptable," Andrew hissed. "I always sit in 1A. There must be a system error. And frankly, look at her." He gestured vaguely at Naomi's outfit. "She is clearly making the other first-class passengers uncomfortable. She doesn't fit the dress code." "There is no dress code for paying passengers, sir," Jennifer said, her voice firming up a little. She was trying to be brave. "Paying?" Andrew laughed cruelly. "You really think she paid for this? Look at her shoes. They have holes in them. She's probably some employee's niece on a buddy pass, and buddy passes get bumped for paying customers, especially platinum customers." He turned his attention directly to Naomi. "Listen to me. I have a merger to close in London. I need to sleep. I cannot sleep in the aisle with the cart banging into my elbow. I need the window. How much? How much to get you to move?" He pulled out a money clip, a thick wad of $100 bills. He peeled off 5 of them. $500. Take it, go to 1B, or better yet, go back to economy and keep the change. It's probably more than you make in a week." Naomi looked at the money. She didn't blink. "I don't want your money," she said quietly. "And I like the window." "You selfish little—" Andrew stepped forward, his face inches from hers. "Sir." Jennifer stepped between them, holding up a hand. "You need to take your seat, or you will be asked to deplane. You are disturbing the cabin." "I'm disturbing the cabin," Andrew roared. "I am the cabin. I pay your salary." "Do you know who I am? I can make one phone call to the CEO of Regal Horizon, and you will be serving coffee at a gas station in New Jersey by tomorrow morning." Jennifer flinched. The threat was specific and nasty. "I suggest you make that call then," Naomi said. Her voice cut through his shouting. "Call the CEO. Go ahead." Andrew glared at her. "You think I won't? You think you're safe because you're playing the diversity card. Sir, that is enough." A male voice boomed from behind. It was the purser, the head flight attendant, a tall, broad-shouldered man named David. He had been observing from the galley and had heard enough. "Mr. Harrington," David said, stepping into the fray. "I am issuing you a formal warning. Harassing another passenger is a federal offense. Sit in seat 1B, or we will have security escort you off." Andrew looked at David, then at Jennifer, and finally at Naomi. He was outnumbered. He adjusted his suit jacket, smoothing the lapels. He needed to be smart. He couldn't miss this meeting. He would sit, but he would make this flight hell for everyone. He would file complaints. He would ruin careers. "Fine," Andrew spat. "I will sit. But I want it noted that this airline prioritizes handouts over loyal business partners. I will be writing a letter to the board." He shoved his bag into the overhead bin, violently, almost hitting Naomi's head. She didn't flinch. Andrew threw himself into seat 1B, the aisle seat. He was fuming. His blood pressure was skyrocketing. He glared at the partition that separated him from the girl. He pulled out his phone. He had 10 minutes before the doors closed. He began typing a furious email to his contact at the airline's corporate office. Subject: disgraceful service. Flight 88. To Richard Sterling, VP of Customer Relations. Richard, I am currently on Flight 88, sitting next to a street urchin who the crew is treating like royalty, while I am threatened with removal. He hit send. He felt a grim satisfaction. He would destroy them all. Beside him, Naomi put her headphones back on, but she didn't play music. She opened her text messages. She tapped on a contact saved simply as Dad. Naomi: "You won't believe the guy sitting next to me. He just tried to buy my seat for $500 and threatened to fire the crew. He's emailing Richard Sterling right now." 3 dots appeared instantly. Dad, is he now? What's his name? Naomi Andrew Harrington. He says he's a platinum member. Dad: "Sit tight, sweetie. I'm making a call." Andrew sat stewing in his anger, aggressively flipping through a Financial Times. He didn't see Naomi's small smile. He didn't know that the gears of the universe were starting to turn, and they were turning against him. He signaled Jennifer as she walked past. "I want a scotch, neat, double, before takeoff." "We can't serve alcohol on the ground during delays, sir," Jennifer said, her voice still shaky. "I don't care about the rules," Andrew snarled. "Just bring it." "No," Naomi said from the window seat. She hadn't looked up from her phone. She said no. Stop harassing her. Andrew turned on her, his eyes bulging. "You shut your mouth. You've got your seat. Don't push your luck. You don't know who you're messing with." "Neither do you," Naomi whispered. Just then the front door of the plane, which had been about to close, remained open. The gate agent ran down the jet bridge, looking frantic. She whispered something to David the purser. David's eyes went wide. He looked at Andrew, then at Naomi. He nodded gravely. David picked up the interphone that connected to the cockpit. "Captain," David said, his voice echoing slightly in the quiet cabin. "We have a situation. You might need to come back here." Andrew smirked. Finally, he thought. They realized their mistake. They're going to kick her off. He leaned back, crossing his legs. He looked at Naomi with a triumphant sneer. "Looks like your free ride is over, sweetheart. Security is probably on the way." Naomi just turned her head and looked out the window at the grey tarmac. "We'll see," she said. The cockpit door buzzed and swung open. Captain Anderson stepped out of the cockpit. He was a man whose presence commanded respect without demanding it. He had greying temples, a sharply pressed uniform with 4 gold stripes on the epaulets, and eyes that had seen everything at 35,000 feet. He didn't look angry. He looked surgically precise. Andrew Harrington uncrossed his legs and sat up straighter, a smug look plastering itself across his face. This was it. The grown-up was here to restore order. "Captain," Andrew said, his voice oozing oil. "Thank God you're here. Your cabin crew is incompetent. I've been trying to explain that there is a security and standards issue in Seat 1A that needs rectifying immediately so we can take off." He gestured dismissively toward Naomi. Captain Anderson ignored Andrew completely. He walked past row 1B and stopped in front of 1A. He removed his cap and gave a slight, respectful bow to the young woman in the hoodie. "Miss Dubois," the captain said, his voice warm but serious. "David informed me there's been a disturbance. My sincerest apologies. Are you all right?" The cabin went deathly silent. Even the air vents seemed to stop hissing. Andrew's smug look froze. It didn't disappear. It just solidified into a grotesque mask of confusion. Miss Dubois. Why is the captain apologizing to the squatter? Naomi slid her headphones down around her neck. I'm fine, Captain Anderson. Just a passenger who seems confused about how assigned seating works and how to speak to people. Andrew couldn't help himself. The silence was too loud, the captain's deference to this girl too bizarre. Excuse me, Captain. Andrew interrupted, his voice tighter now, higher pitched. I don't think you understand the situation. I am Andrew Harrington. I am a Platinum Global. Captain Anderson turned slowly. He didn't just turn his head. He turned his entire body to face Andrew. His eyes were no longer warm. They were glacial. Mr. Harrington, the captain said, his voice terrifyingly calm. I believe it is you who does not understand the situation. I want her moved. Andrew doubled down, though his stomach was starting to churn with an unfamiliar acid. She threw my bag. She's disrupting the flight. I demand. You demand nothing on my aircraft. Captain Anderson cut him off, his voice like a whip crack. He stepped closer, looming over Andrew, who suddenly felt very small in his expensive Italian suit. You just spent the last 20 minutes harassing, threatening, and attempting to bribe a passenger. You berated my crew. You threatened their livelihood. And you did it all because you assumed that because of how she looks, she didn't belong in your world. The captain leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a steel whisper that everyone in first class strained to hear. You asked if she was playing an employee standby game. She isn't. You asked if she won a lottery. She didn't. The captain gestured with an open hand toward Naomi, who was calmly watching Andrew begin to sweat. Mr. Harrington, the reason that young lady is sitting in seat 1A is that her father owns this airplane. Her father owns this entire airline. Andrew felt the blood drain from his face so fast it made him dizzy. His heart gave a painful, staggering thump against his ribs. That is Naomi Dubois. The captain delivered the final blow. Her father is Robert Dubois, the CEO of Regal Horizon. That's the boss's daughter you just tried to bribe with $500. The words hung in the air. That's the boss's daughter. Andrew Harrington froze. It wasn't just a figure of speech. His limbs felt heavy, locked in place by a sudden, paralyzing terror. The cockpit of his life, where he had always been the pilot, was suddenly in a nosedive. He looked at Naomi. The ripped jeans, the hoodie, it wasn't poverty. It was the ultimate luxury. The freedom of not needing to impress anyone, because you already owned everything. He opened his mouth to speak, but only a dry croak came out. The email. He remembered the email he had sent to Richard Sterling, threatening to have the crew fired. Richard Sterling, who reported directly to Robert Dubois. He had just signed his own professional death warrant, and he had done it using the in-flight Wi-Fi of the company he had attacked. The silence was broken by Naomi. She chuckled. It was a soft sound, but in the frozen cabin, it sounded like a gavel coming down. I told you, Andrew, she said, her voice devoid of malice, just stating a fact. You didn't know who you were messing with. Andrew turned to the captain, his bully facade completely shattered, replaced by naked, clammy panic. Captain, please. It was a misunderstanding. I'm under a lot of stress. The merger. London. I didn't know. You didn't need to know who she was to treat her with basic human decency, Captain Anderson said. He turned to the purser. David. Yes, Captain. David was standing taller now, his shoulders squared. Mr. Harrington is now a security risk. His erratic behavior, aggression towards staff and passengers, and attempt to bribe a federal invitee mean he is unfit to fly today. Call Port Authority. Have him removed. No! Andrew leapt up his seatbelt sign, pinging violently. You can't do that. I have to be in London by 9 a.m. tomorrow. If I miss this meeting, the deal dies my firm. Sit down, sir. David barked, stepping forward. Naomi. Andrew whirled on the girl he had called a street urchin minutes ago. He grasped the partition wall, his knuckles white. Miss Dubois, please. Tell him. Tell him it was a joke. I apologize. I sincerely apologize. I'll do anything. Please don't let them throw me off. Naomi looked at him. She studied him like a biologist studying an unpleasant specimen under a microscope. She saw the sweat staining the collar of his $5,000 shirt. She saw the terror in the eyes of a man who had never faced a consequence he couldn't buy his way out of. She picked up her phone and resumed scrolling. I thought you said this was the real world, Andrew, she said without looking up. In the real world, when you act like a monster, you get treated like one. Goodbye. Two large men in dark blue uniforms, bearing the Port Authority insignia, appeared at the cabin door. Which one, Captain? The first officer asked. Captain Anderson pointed a finger at Andrew. That one. Get him off my ship. Sir, let's go. Grab your things, the officer said, grabbing Andrew by the bicep. His grip was iron. Wait, my briefcase, Andrew spluttered, trying to reach under the seat. We'll mail it to you. Move. They didn't let him walk out with dignity. They hauled him, Andrew Harrington. Managing partner of Sterling and Oakhaven, was physically dragged out of first class. The real humiliation, however, was yet to come. They didn't take him out the jet bridge side door. They walked him through the entire plane. He was marched past the business class passengers, some of whom he knew professionally. They quickly averted their eyes, pretending to read newspapers, unwilling to be associated with the toxicity radiating off him. Then came economy, the back there he had sneered about. As he was led down the long, narrow aisle, dozens of faces looked up at him. The young couple with the baby he had shoved past at the gate glared at him. People whispered. Someone near row 30 slowly started a slow clap. Others joined in. It wasn't applause. It was a rhythm of pure, unadulterated shame. Andrew kept his head down, his face burning brighter than the safety lights on the floor. He was being ejected from the high-altitude society he thought he ruled, forced to do the walk of shame through the realm of the common people he despised. Just as they reached the rear galley door, Andrew's phone, still clutched in his sweaty palm, vibrated violently. It was an email notification. He glanced down wildly. The sender was the senior managing partner of his firm. The subject line was 3 words, urgent. Regal Horizon incident. The karma wasn't just hitting him, it was steamrolling him, and he hadn't even left the airport yet. The air inside the jet bridge was suffocatingly humid, a stark contrast to the climate-controlled luxury of the first-class cabin Andrew had just been ripped from. The heavy steel door of the aircraft slammed shut behind him with a finality that echoed in his bones. It was the sound of a vault locking, sealing away his future. The Port Authority officers didn't handle him gently. They marched him up the incline past the glass windows, where curious onlookers watched the man in the expensive suit being escorted like a common criminal. You can release me now, Andrew snarled, trying to yank his arm free as they reached the gate area. I am not under arrest. This is a civil dispute. You're right. You're not under arrest yet," the older officer said, releasing his grip with a shove. "But you are banned from the terminal. You need to collect your bags at oversized luggage and leave the premises immediately. If you try to re-enter a secure area, you will be arrested for trespassing." Andrew straightened his jacket, though the silk lining was now soaked with cold sweat. He looked around. Brenda, the gate agent he had been rude to earlier, was standing at the podium. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't gloating. She just looked at him with a mixture of pity and exhaustion. "Brenda," Andrew said, his voice trembling slightly. He needed an ally. "Get me on the next flight. British Airways Virgin, I don't care. I have to be in London. Book it now. I'll pay double." Brenda typed something into her terminal. She looked up. "I can't, Mr. Harrington." "What do you mean you can't?" "Is it full?" "No, sir," Brenda said quietly. "Your profile has been flagged. It's a global deny code. It's not just Regal Horizon. It's an alliance-wide ban. You've been placed on the no-fly list for disruptive behavior pending an investigation. I can't issue you a ticket. No one can." Andrew felt the floor tilt beneath him. "That's illegal. I'll sue. I'll sue everyone." "You should probably check your phone, Mr. Harrington," Brenda said, pointing to the device he was clutching like a lifeline. "It's been buzzing non-stop." Andrew looked down. The screen was lit up with notifications, missed calls, texts, and that email. The one from the senior managing partner of Sterling and Oakhaven. The man who had mentored him, the man whose name was on the door, Elias Oakhaven. Andrew's thumb hovered over the email app. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped the phone. He tapped the notification. From Elias Oakhaven. Subject: Urgent Regal Horizon Incident. Immediate suspension. Andrew. I just received a personal phone call from Robert Dubois. He informed me that a senior partner from my firm verbally abused his daughter, attempted to bribe her, and threatened his flight crew on Flight 88. Do you have any idea who Sterling and Oakhaven's biggest liquidity provider is? It's the Dubois Trust. Andrew. Robert Dubois is not just an airline CEO. He is one of our firm's largest silent investors. You didn't just insult a passenger. You spat in the face of the man who keeps the lights on in this building. Effective immediately, your access to firm accounts is revoked. Your company credit cards have been frozen. Do not go to London. Do not go to the office. Go home. We will speak on Monday. Elias. Andrew read the email 3 times. The words swam before his eyes. Silent investor. He had built his career on knowing everything about everyone. He knew leverage. He knew secrets. But he didn't know this. He had been so blinded by his own arrogance, so focused on the visual of a girl in a hoodie, that he failed to see the titan standing behind her. He walked blindly toward the exit, his expensive dress shoes clicking hollowly on the linoleum. He felt like a ghost. As he reached the waiting area near the food court, he saw a group of teenagers huddled around an iPad, laughing. "Look at his face when she says no," one of them laughed. "What a loser," another said. "That vein in his forehead is gonna pop." Andrew stopped. A cold dread, colder than the email, washed over him. He stepped closer. "What are you watching?" he rasped. The teenagers looked up, startled. Then their eyes went wide. They looked at the screen, then at Andrew, then back at the screen. It's him," one whispered. "It's the plane guy," another shouted. Andrew snatched the iPad from the kid's hands. On the screen was a video. It was shaky, filmed vertically from the row behind seat 2B. the elderly woman with the pearls. She had recorded everything. The video was titled "Entitled Suit Tries to Buy Black Girl's Seat Gets Destroyed by Pilot." It had been uploaded 20 minutes ago. It already had 400,000 views. Andrew watched himself on the screen. He looked monstrous. His face was red and distorted with rage. His voice sounded shrill and hateful. "I don't know what kind of affirmative action lottery game you're playing." The comments were scrolling by so fast they were a blur. "Dox this guy immediately. Who is he? Find him. Imagine talking to the CEO's daughter like that. R.I.P. his career. Sterling and Oakhaven. That's where he works, spamming their reviews now." He dropped the iPad onto the table. The teenagers grabbed it and scrambled away, holding their phones up to record him now in real time. Mr. Harrington. Andrew turned. A news crew stationed at JFK for a puff piece on holiday travel had caught wind of the commotion. A camera was pointed right at his face. A microphone was shoved under his nose. "Is it true you were removed for racially abusing a passenger? Did you know she was Naomi Dubois? Do you have a comment on your suspension?" Andrew didn't speak. He couldn't. He put his briefcase over his face and ran. He ran past the Hudson News, past the frantic travelers, past the life he used to own. He burst through the automatic doors onto the curbside pickup, gasping for air, inhaling the exhaust fumes of buses and taxis. He was alone. He was viral. And he was finished. 72 hours later, Andrew sat at the long mahogany table in the main conference room of Sterling and Oakhaven. It was a room he had dominated for 15 years. He had fired people in this room. He had destroyed companies in this room. Now he was the only one on the guest side of the table. Across from him sat Elias Oakhaven, the firm's founder and the head of HR. A woman named Sarah, whom Andrew had previously referred to as Overhead. Flanking them were 3 lawyers Andrew didn't recognize. They looked like sharks smelling blood in the water. The room was silent. On the wall screen, a graph of the company's stock price was displayed. It showed a sharp, jagged drop over the last 2 days. "Andrew," Elias began. His voice wasn't angry. It was tired. "I've known you a long time. You're a shark. I liked that about you. But sharks have to know not to bite the boat." "It was a stressful day, Elias," Andrew pleaded. He looked terrible. He hadn't slept since the airport. He was wearing a suit, but it looked slept in. "I can fix this. I'll issue a public apology. I'll do sensitivity training. I'll donate to whatever charity they want. Just don't let this end my tenure." Elias slid a thick folder across the table. "It's not just the video, Andrew. Though the video is catastrophic. We have received over 10,000 emails demanding your resignation. Clients are pulling out. But that's not the worst part." Elias pressed a button on the remote. The screen changed. It showed a press release from British Ether, the company Andrew was supposed to merge with. British Ether terminates merger. Talks with Sterling and Oakhaven. Statement: "We do not align ourselves with partners who display a fundamental lack of ethics and respect. The values demonstrated by Mr. Harrington are incompatible with our corporate ethos." Andrew stared at the screen. The deal. The billion-dollar deal. Gone. "You cost us the merger," Elias said quietly. "That deal was worth $80 million in fees to this firm. You lost it because you didn't like a girl's hoodie." Andrew choked. "I didn't know." "Ignorance is not a defense, Andrew. It's a liability," one of the lawyers spoke up. "We are invoking the moral turpitude clause in your partnership agreement. You are being terminated for cause, effective immediately. Andrew felt a surge of panic. Terminated for cause. That means no severance, the lawyer confirmed coldly. No golden parachute, no retention bonus. And because your actions caused demonstrable financial harm to the firm, specifically the loss of the British Ether account, we are exercising our right to claw back your stock options to cover the damages. Andrew stood up his chair, scraping violently against the floor. You can't do that. That's my money. I have $20 million invested stock. Not anymore, Elias said. Read the contract, Andrew. You signed it. Gross misconduct, resulting in material loss. You torched $80 million. We are taking your $20 million to stop the bleeding. You are leaving this building with nothing. I'll sue you. Andrew screamed, his composure finally snapping. I built this department. I am this firm. You were a liability, Elias said, standing up. Now you are a trespasser. Security is waiting outside. Andrew looked at Sarah, the HR head. She didn't look away. She looked at him with the same expression Naomi Dubois had used on the plane, calm, unimpressed, and powerful. Please, Andrew whispered. The fight drained out of him. I have mortgages. I have the alimony payments. If you take the stock, I'm bankrupt. Elias Oakhaven walked to the door and held it open. You should have thought about that before you tried to buy a human being for $500, Andrew. It's a long walk to the elevator. Try not to make a scene. Andrew walked out of the conference room. The bullpen, usually buzzing with the noise of traders and analysts, went dead silent as he passed. Hundreds of eyes followed him. These were the people he had terrorized for years, the analysts he had screamed at, the assistants he had made cry. They weren't looking at him with fear anymore. They were looking at him with disdain. He reached the elevator and pressed the button. As the doors slid open, he saw his reflection in the mirrored interior. He looked old. He looked tall. He stepped into the elevator alone. As the doors closed, cutting off the view of his former kingdom, his phone buzzed one last time. It was a notification from LinkedIn. New post by Naomi Dubois. Kindness is free. Disrespect will cost you everything. Grateful for the amazing crew on Regal Horizon Flight 88, who stood up for what's right. At Karma, marked Flight 88. The post had 2 million likes. Andrew slumped against the elevator wall, sliding down until he hit the floor. He buried his face in his hands. The elevator descended, taking him down, down, down to the street level, to the pavement, to the real world he had tried so desperately to rise above. The fall was not a sudden drop. It was a long, suffocating slide. In the movies, the villain loses everything in a single dramatic scene. A gavel bangs, a door slams, and the screen fades to black. But for Andrew Harrington, the end of his life as a master of the universe was a slow, agonizing dismantle piece by painful piece. 6 months had passed since Flight 88. 6 months since the video titled Entitled Suit vs. Boss's Daughter had racked up 40 million views across every social media platform on Earth. The internet, usually fickle and quick to move on, had found something uniquely detestable about Andrew. Perhaps it was the sneer. Perhaps it was the affirmative action lottery comment. Whatever it was, he had become a meme, a symbol, a caricature of corporate greed and bigotry. Andrew sat on the edge of a twin mattress in a studio apartment in Weehawken, New Jersey. The room smelled of stale coffee and the neighbors' cigarettes drifting through the thin walls. His penthouse on 57th Street The one with the view of Central Park that he used to boast about was gone. The bank had foreclosed on it 3 months ago. The liquidity crisis caused by the clawback of his stock options, combined with the legal fees from his failed lawsuit against Sterling and Oakhaven, had drained him dry. He adjusted his tie in the small, cracked mirror above the sink. The tie was Hermes, a relic from his old life, but the shirt was polyester, bought from a discount rack. He looked at his reflection. The arrogance that had once fueled him was gone, replaced by a permanent etching of exhaustion and bitterness. His hair, once impeccably dyed and styled, was now grey and thinning. He looked older than 52. He looked defeated. Today was another interview, his 19th in 2 months. He wasn't interviewing for a partnership. He wasn't interviewing for a VP role. He wasn't even interviewing for a senior analyst position. Those doors had been slammed locked and bolted. The financial world was a small village, and Andrew was the town pariah. No compliance officer in New York would sign off on hiring a man whose name was flagged on every risk database in the Western Hemisphere. Today, Andrew was interviewing for a job as a shift manager at a logistics fulfillment center in Queens. The salary was $65,000 a year, roughly what he used to spend on his summer rental in the Hamptons. But he had no choice. The alimony payments to his ex-wife were overdue, and the judge had threatened jail time if he missed another month. He grabbed his coat, a nondescript black wool jacket that had replaced his cashmere overcoat, and headed out into the biting December wind. The commute was the first daily humiliation. Andrew used to take a black car everywhere. He hadn't stepped foot on public transportation in 20 years. Now he stood on the platform of the Port Authority bus terminal, squeezed between a construction worker, eating a breakfast sandwich, and a tired nurse ending her shift. The air was thick with diesel fumes. He kept his head down, pulling his scarf up to his nose. It was a reflex now. In the first few weeks after the incident, he couldn't walk a block without someone shouting at him. "Hey, plane guy," or "Where's your first-class seat now?" He had been spat on twice. He had been refused service at a deli he had frequented for a decade. Now the recognition happened less often, but the fear of it was a constant shadow. The bus ride to Queens was a jarring, rattling hour of stop-and-go traffic. Andrew stared out the window at the grey skyline. He could see the Manhattan skyscrapers in the distance, shining like Oz. He used to be inside one of those glass needles looking down on the ants. Now he was the ant. He arrived at the fulfillment center, a massive windowless box of corrugated metal surrounded by chain-link fences. Trucks roared in and out of the loading bays. This was the engine of the economy, the place where the things people bought were packed and shipped. It was loud, chaotic, and smelled of cardboard and exhaust. He checked in with security. The guard, a young man with a bored expression, took Andrew's ID. He glanced at the name, then paused. He looked up at Andrew. Andrew braced himself. Here it comes. The recognition. The smirk. But the guard just handed the ID back. Visitor badge. Clip it to your lapel. Go to Office B. Andrew let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He was becoming anonymous. He wasn't sure if that was better or worse. The interview was with a man named Ramirez. Ramirez was younger than Andrew, perhaps 30, wearing a polo shirt and a safety vest. He sat behind a metal desk in a cubicle that vibrated every time a forklift drove by. "So, Mr. Harrington," Ramirez said, looking at Andrew's resume. "This is quite a resume. Sterling and Oakhaven. You were a managing partner." "Yes," Andrew said, his voice stiff. "I was." That's a big jump down to logistics management, isn't it? Ramirez asked, his eyes scanning the page. Says here you left 6 months ago. Personal reasons. Andrew nodded, his hands clasped tight in his lap to stop them from shaking. Yes, I decided to pivot. I wanted a change of pace. I've always admired the efficiency of the supply chain sector. It was a lie, and they both knew it. Ramirez typed Andrew's name into his computer. He paused. He clicked a link, then another. The silence stretched. The humming of the warehouse lights seemed to get louder. Ramirez turned the monitor slightly. He didn't look angry. He looked uncomfortable. Mr. Harrington, Ramirez said softly, we run a diverse shop here. My team is 60% minority. We have people from everywhere. Haiti, Bangladesh, Nigeria, Queens. Andrew felt the sweat prickling under his collar. I am a professional, Mr. Ramirez. I know how to manage teams. I can increase your throughput by 15% in the first quarter. I'm good with numbers. I don't doubt your math skills, Ramirez said, but a manager needs respect. If I put you on the floor, and one of the guys recognizes you if they saw that video. Ramirez shook his head. It's a safety risk. It's a morale risk. I can't do it. Andrew felt a desperation clawing at his throat. Please, I need this job. I'll work the night shift. I'll stay in the office. I won't interact with the floor crew unless necessary. Just give me a chance. It was the first time Andrew Harrington had begged for a job in his life. He felt small. He felt hollow. Ramirez looked at him with pity. That was the worst part. Hate he could handle. He understood hate. But pity. Pity was for the weak. I'm sorry, Andrew, Ramirez said. I can't hire you. HR would have my head. Good luck. Andrew walked out of the warehouse 10 minutes later. The wind hit him like a physical blow. He walked to the bus stop, but when the bus came, he didn't get on. He just started walking. He needed to move. He needed to outrun the reality that was closing in on him. He found himself walking toward the subway. He took the 7 train back toward Manhattan. He didn't know why. He had no business there. Maybe he just wanted to be near the money again, even if he couldn't touch it. He got off at Times Square. It was sensory overload lights, tourists' noise. He walked numbly through the crowds. He was bumped and jostled. No one apologized. In the real world, no one cleared a path for him. He stopped at a crosswalk on 42nd Street. The crowd was dense here, waiting for the light. Above him, the massive curved digital billboard that wrapped around the corner of the building flickered. The ad for a soda vanished, replaced by a brilliant blue sky. A plane soared across the screens, a sleek silver jet with the Regal Horizon logo on the tail. The text appeared in elegant, bold letters. Leadership is not a rank, it is a behavior. And then the image shifted. It was a video clip. It showed a diverse group of Regal Horizon employees standing in a hangar. Flight attendants, baggage handlers, pilots, mechanics. And in the center, standing not in front but among them, was Naomi Dubois. She looked radiant. She was wearing a simple blazer, her hair in braids. She was laughing at something a mechanic was saying. The camera panned out to show her father, Robert Dubois, watching her with pride. The ad wasn't selling tickets. It was a corporate branding campaign about values. The text changed again. Naomi Dubois, Vice President of People and Culture. Building a sky where everyone belongs. Andrew stood frozen on the sidewalk. The irony was so sharp it felt like it pierced a lung. The girl he had mocked for her clothes, the girl he had tried to banish to the back of the plane, was now the face of the future. She was towering over Times Square, 50 feet high, looking down on the city that had cast him out. She had won. Not because she fought him, but because she was everything he wasn't. She was secure. She was kind. She was real. A group of tourists next to Andrew were looking up at the billboard. "That's her," a teenage girl said, pointing. "That's the girl from the video. She's so cool." "Yeah," her friend replied. "Did you see she started a scholarship fund for aviation students with the settlement money from that lawsuit? She's a legend." Andrew felt his knees weaken. Settlement money. The lawsuit the airline had filed against him for damages and defamation. They had won that, too. Every penny he had left had gone to her foundation. He had literally funded the legacy of the woman he tried to destroy. He looked away from the billboard, unable to bear the brightness of her success. He looked down at the dirty slush at his feet. "Excuse me, buddy. You're blocking the trash can," a sanitation worker said, pushing a cart toward him. Andrew stepped aside. "Sorry," he mumbled. "You look like you've seen a ghost," the worker said, pausing to empty a bin. Andrew looked at the man. He was older, his face lined with the years of hard work in the cold. He looked tired, but his eyes were kind. Andrew started, then stopped. "I used to be someone." The worker chuckled, shaking a fresh bag into the can. "We all used to be someone, pal. Question is, who are you today?" The worker moved on, blending into the crowd. "Who are you today?" Andrew looked at his reflection in the shop window of a souvenir store. He saw a man in a cheap coat with no job, no family, and no future in the world he had built. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He opened his contacts. There were hundreds of names: CEOs, VPs, directors. He had called them all. None had answered. He scrolled down to the bottom. Lisa. Ex-wife. He hesitated. She hated him. With good reason. He had been a terrible husband, more married to the firm than to her. But she was the only person left who actually knew him. He pressed the call button. It rang, and rang, and rang. He was about to hang up when the line clicked. "Andrew." Her voice was wary cold. "Why are you calling?" The lawyer said, "I know." Andrew said, his voice breaking. "I'm not calling about the money. I know there isn't any." Silence on the other end. "Then what do you want?" Andrew looked up at the billboard one last time. Naomi Dubois was fading out, replaced by an ad for Broadway. The moment was gone. Andrew choked back a sob. It was the first time he had cried in 30 years. "I just wanted to know if it's too late to try to be a decent person." There was a long pause. The sound of the city rushed around him, sirens, horns, laughter. "It's never too late, Andrew." Lisa said, her voice softening, just a fraction, a microscopic crack in the ice. "But you have a hell of a lot of work to do, and you're starting from zero." "I know," Andrew whispered. "I'm starting from zero." "Good luck," she said. And she hung up. Andrew lowered the phone. He stood there for a long moment, breathing in the cold air. It didn't smell like money anymore. It smelled like exhaust and roasted nuts and humanity. He turned away from the bright lights of Times Square. He adjusted his scarf. He didn't have a job. He didn't have a penthouse. But for the first time in his life, he wasn't looking down on anyone. He walked toward the subway entrance. He had to go back to Weehawken. He had to figure out how to pay his rent. He had to find a job that didn't care who he used to be. Maybe a dishwashing gig. Maybe cleaning floors. It was a long way down from first class. But as he descended the stairs into the grime of the subway station, Andrew Harrington realized something. His feet were finally touching the ground. And that is the story of how Andrew Harrington paid the ultimate price for his arrogance. He thought his bank account gave him the right to belittle others, but he learned the hard way that true class isn't about what you wear or where you sit. It's about how you treat people. Andrew lost his job, his fortune, and his dignity because he couldn't show basic respect to someone he judged based on appearance. It's a powerful reminder that you never truly know who you're talking to, so it pays to be kind. Always. What do you think? Did Andrew deserve to lose everything? Or was the punishment too harsh? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. Thanks for watching, and remember, be kind or be humble. You never know who's watching. See you in the next video.